Welcome to Navigating Religious OCD. My name is Sariah Harrison, and I experience religious OCD, also known as scrupulosity. Scrupulosity is an incredibly anxious reality that hijacks your religious experience. Having been terrified of doing something wrong, having experienced deep fear that I would someday be sent to hell, and having been absolutely terrified of God, my goal is to share my real to help you heal through experiences, resources, and practical tools. Join me on this journey of navigating religious OCD. Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 7. This is a continuation of episode 6. We're just going to pick up our discussion right where we left it off last week. Another subtype of OCD is purely obsessional OCD. Purely obsessional OCD refers to OCD subtypes where compulsions are mostly mental rather than physical. People still perform compulsions, but they're hidden, like mental review or thought neutralization. This can be a reality across multiple different subtypes of OCD. I have definitely experienced this with scrupulosity. And this is actually a big reason why it's been really difficult for me to recognize my experience with OCD as an experience with OCD, because my idea of OCD previously was contamination OCD. Like I thought it was just for individuals who were super worried about getting sick or being contaminated. And so they would wash their hands a lot and they would clean surfaces a lot. Like I thought that compulsions had to be things that you physically did, but that's not true. Like compulsions can be things that you repeatedly and consistently do in your thoughts, things like mental review or thought neutralization, right? I do this all the time. This is actually one of the main ways that I experience compulsive behavior. Like if I'm having lots of anxiety inducing thoughts, I'll just talk back to them in my thoughts. Like I'll tell them that they're not true, or I'll start analyzing them. Like I do lots of different things to try to alleviate or get rid of these anxiety inducing thoughts. And that actually can just fuel the OCD cycle. Okay, so with purely obsessional OCD, like this could cover any OCD subtype. So it could cover any like aspect or area of obsessions. Some common compulsions with this could include rumination and mental checking, right? Like that's what I was discussing earlier with analyzing it, or like running it through in your mind over and over, like checking to make sure that you did it right or correctly, or that that thought is not actually true, right? Neutralizing a bad thought with a good one, seeking reassurance or researching. Okay, there's going to be a level of interference with daily living. Like it's going to interrupt or interfere with your ability to just be present and to be about like living the life you want to live. Another subtype of OCD is real event OCD. Real event OCD involves obsessive guilt or shame over something that actually happened in the past. The event is typically minor, but becomes the focus of intense rumination and self-blame. Holy cow, I have experienced this one. I experience this one often, actually, a lot. I have a very vivid memory. I can seemingly like replay things in my head very easily, and basically re-experience them. It seems like this sense of replay though is often happening with lots of things that are very minor, with things that people wouldn't think twice about, right? But I can just like replay them in my mind and I think about them over and over and over and I analyze them and wonder if I did something wrong, or if I should have done something different, right? Like there's this intense rumination and self-blame for these different things that actually happened, right? Like that I actually did, but that I'm super worried that I did wrong. Some common obsessions or intrusive, unwanted, anxiety inducing thoughts with real event OCD could include thoughts such as, what if I'm a bad person for doing that? Or what does it mean about me that I did that in that way, right? Like there's a lot of anxiety that is going to be evoked by all these different thoughts, right? And they're going to be persistent, like they're going to come back repeatedly. These thoughts are ego dystonic, meaning they contradict your values. Okay, this is true of obsessions across the board with OCD. Obsessions by nature, like those thoughts, are ego dystonic. Like they contradict your values. They're not in line with what you actually want, and with what you actually believe, with how you actually want to live your life, right? They're ego dystonic. And that is a huge part of what makes them so distressing and so anxiety inducing, because they don't align with your values. They don't align with how you actually want to live your life, and with what you actually believe like at your core, right? Like they don't align with your values. And so that is where so much anxiety comes in, because these obsessions directly contradict the way that you want to be living your life, the way that you want to be about your life. Some common compulsions with real event OCD include reassurance seeking or confessing, right? Like telling people, bringing it up, like telling them the experience and just expressing like, I'm so sorry that I did that. I didn't mean it in this way, right? They may not have thought about it, right? Like since the event, but you may have been thinking about it constantly. I've experienced that so many times, so many times over. And had no idea that it was compulsive behavior, right? That it was OCD. Another common compulsion with real event OCD could be mental review of the event, right? Like that's this rumination that we were talking about, just like reliving it over and over and over, avoiding reminders or triggers of the event. This is where your life can become really narrow because if the compulsive behavior that you're feeling driven to do is to avoid any sense of anxiety or anything that reminds you of the anxiety that one certain event was triggering, right? Then there are going to be certain people and certain places and certain things that you can't go or you can't do, you can't interact with, right? Because it triggers too much anxiety. And then your life becomes narrow because there are so many things that you're just scared of, like genuinely scared of, because they trigger so much anxiety or they have in the past. Like they've brought very physical responses, like physical anxiety responses, and you don't want that again. And so you try to avoid it, right? Like it seems like a logical thing to do, right? But it actually reinforces the anxiety in the long term. Another subtype of OCD is relationship OCD. Relationship OCD centers around doubts or fears about your romantic relationship, even when it's healthy and loving. These thoughts feel intrusive and distressing. Okay, some common obsessions or intrusive, unwanted anxiety inducing thoughts with relationship OCD could be thoughts such as, do I really love my partner? What if I'm not attracted to them? What if this relationship isn't right? Okay, these thoughts are going to be persistent and they're going to bring a lot of increased levels of anxiety and distress. And then, in an effort to get away from the anxiety that these intrusive thoughts are causing, the individual is going to feel an urge to engage in compulsive behavior. Some of these compulsive behaviors or compulsions could be comparing your relationship to others, or mentally reviewing different experiences, or reassurance seeking, testing feelings, or avoiding intimacy. Okay, it's going to significantly interfere with your ability to engage in a healthy and productive, happy relationship with this individual because there's going to be so much anxiety in that space, so much anxiety about whether the relationship is right or not, or if you actually love them, right? Like it's just going to be an incredibly anxious experience that leaves you constantly questioning and mentally reviewing, reassurance seeking, right? Like it's OCD. Another subtype of OCD is responsibility OCD. Responsibility OCD involves excessive concern over being responsible for harm, mistakes, or wrongdoing, especially if it affects others. Even everyday decisions can feel dangerous or morally weighted. I have definitely experienced responsibility OCD, like at different levels and to varying degrees at different times in my life. Some common obsessions or intrusive, unwanted, anxiety inducing thoughts that could accompany responsibility OCD include thoughts such as, what if I cause an accident due to carelessness? Or thoughts such as, if I say the wrong thing, someone could get hurt. Or it's my fault if anything bad happens. Okay, these thoughts are going to bring heightened levels of anxiety. And then, in an effort to get away from that anxiety, these individuals are going to engage in compulsive behavior such as overchecking or over explaining yourself, avoiding decisions or responsibilities, confessing to minor or imagined wrongs. There's this very real sense of over responsibility because taking responsibility for anything less brings a lot of anxiety. Another subtype of OCD is suicidal OCD. They put a little note in this article that I'm going to read because I think they put it there for a reason. They just said all thoughts of suicide or self-harm should be taken seriously. If you or someone you know has reported thoughts of self-harm, please call 911 or contact your local emergency room number immediately. In the US, you may also call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. This line is available to you all day, every day. Okay, this is true. Like suicide and self-harm thoughts should be taken seriously. And in the space of OCD, this becomes really difficult because when you do have, like, if you are experiencing suicidal OCD and if you do have a suicidal thought, like, there can be a ton of anxiety and fear, right? Because we've been taught you should take this seriously. Like, don't just brush this off. This means something significant, or it could, right? Okay. And that right there is where the concern with OCD lies, right? Like, you become obsessed with what does this mean about me, right? Like, if I'm having this thought, that I should kill myself? What does that mean about me, right? Like, do I actually want to die? Okay, but with OCD, the obsessive thoughts are ego dystonic. Like they do not align with your values. Like they go against your true desires. So with suicidal OCD, like suicidal OCD involves intrusive thoughts about ending your life, even though you don't actually want to die. These thoughts are disturbing and ego dystonic, meaning they go against your true desires. So I've been experiencing pretty intense suicidal OCD for the past year. And what that's looked like for me is I've just had the thought, kill yourself, like come into my mind way more times than I can even count, right? Like every day. And if I'm in a state of heightened anxiety, this thought comes way more frequently. It's super disturbing, super distressing, super annoying. I have no desire to kill myself, right? Like that is not what I want. I want to live. I love my life, right? Like, so it's so annoying that I have that thought repeatedly, like perpetually, persistently, right? Like it just loops. It comes back. And the more I try to get rid of it, the more that it seems to come, right? Like this is an experience with OCD. But when this thought first started coming, I didn't know that suicidal OCD was a thing. Like I didn't know that that thought could be an experience with OCD. And so it was just super, super disturbing, right? I was like, oh my goodness, that is like terrible to have that thought. I just became really anxious about it. I don't want it. I need to get rid of it. Okay, this is an experience with OCD, that effort or that desire to get rid of the thought, to get rid of the anxiety that it's causing. Any effort to get rid of it is going to be compulsive behavior. So some compulsive behavior that I've done, like I just talk back to the thought all the time. Like I'll just be like, stop, like, no, like I don't want it. Go away, right? Like you're so annoying. I just talk back to it. Another compulsive behavior that I've done with these suicidal thoughts has been seeking reassurance, whether that's from myself or from others or from God, right? Like I've just had conversations where I've just been seeking validation and reassurance that it doesn't mean anything about me, that it's not significant, right? Like those efforts to get away from the anxiety, right? Like I'm not saying don't talk to other people if you're having these thoughts. I'm saying if you're doing it to get away from the anxiety that they're causing, that could be compulsive. And I've noticed that a lot in my experience because it does bring such heightened levels of anxiety. And the heightened levels of anxiety, right? Like that experience, just like everything inside me just wants to get away from it like that. It just doesn't feel safe, right? Like, and that's just how anxiety feels in the brain and the body, right? Like if it's natural to want to get away from it, like compulsive behavior actually makes a lot of sense. It's just not helpful. Like it reinforces the anxiety around that certain thing down the road, right? Like around that thought. Okay, so we've gone through multiple different subtypes of OCD, and that felt like a really exciting and thorough overview of OCD. There are so many different ways that OCD can show up in an individual's life. And it is not in the ways that individuals toss the term around, right? Like there is so much more going on. And it's really just an experience with persistent, intrusive, unwanted, anxiety inducing thoughts, right? Those are the obsessions. Then that brings lots of anxiety. And then, in an effort to get away from that anxiety, that's where the compulsive behaviors come in. There are way more subtypes than we covered, right? Like, I think there are more subtypes than are formally recognized because OCD could show up in any area or aspect of an individual's life. Okay, and now diving into what scrupulosity or religious OCD is. Scrupulosity or religious OCD involves fears of moral or religious failure, sin, or punishment. Okay, some common obsessions or intrusive, unwanted, anxiety inducing thoughts that are common with scrupulosity or religious OCD could include thoughts such as, what if I offend God? Or what if I do this the wrong way? Right? Like concerning whatever religious practice it is, right? Like, what if I do it wrong? Am I going to hell? Right? Like, all these thoughts are going to bring intense anxiety, like intense levels of distress and anxiety. Then, in an effort to get away from that anxiety, some common compulsions that these individuals might do include excessive prayer or confession or repeating spiritual practices until they feel right, or avoiding certain religious content or discussions. it begins to hijack your religious experience because there's so much anxiety around certain religious experiences or topics or concerns, right? Like there's just heightened levels of anxiety throughout your religious experience. And it totally affects the way that you navigate your religious experience because so much of your efforts to navigate your religious experience are really just efforts to get away from anxiety. And this is OCD at work. A more formal definition of scrupulosity is a psychological disorder primarily characterized by pathological guilt or obsession associated with moral or religious issues that is often accompanied by compulsive moral or religious observance and is highly distressing and maladaptive. Okay, that might have felt a bit heavy. I'll break it down for you. Scrupulosity is a subtype of OCD. So we've got obsessions and compulsions. The content that the obsessions and compulsions center around with scrupulosity or religious OCD is moral or religious in nature. Moral just meaning concerning right and wrong. So there's lots of intense fear or heightened anxiety, lots of intrusive, unwanted anxiety inducing thoughts surrounding whether or not an individual is doing things right, like either in general in their life or in their religious experience. There's also a lot of guilt that accompanies that experience or this concern of doing things right or correctly. So, with me, in my experience, I've had tons of anxiety just around doing things correctly in my religious experience. And this is where my religious experience has been completely hijacked at times because, well, first of all, I haven't been aware that anxiety was running the show. But secondly, when you're experiencing these heightened levels of anxiety, the natural physical response is to get away from it. And so, in an effort to get away from this fear that I'm not doing things right, I try extra hard to do things right. And that is compulsive. Like if you're trying to get away from the anxiety that's being caused by whatever it is, right, by doing something else, that's compulsive in nature. So my religious experience at times has been completely taken over by this intense anxiety and guilt that I'm not doing things right, and this effort to do things right. In order to minimize the anxiety that is being caused by this very real, like physical concern, right? Like I have a physical reaction or response to this concern that I'm not doing things right. And like the definition says, scrupulosity is highly distressing and maladaptive. Like it's not helpful, it's not healthy, it's not a healthy religious experience to constantly be doing things out of fear, out of anxiety, or to get away from the fear or anxiety that you're not doing them correctly, right? So with scrupulosity, there's serious anxiety around the thought that if you don't do things a certain way, religiously or morally, there could be serious consequences. So this goes back to the anxiety cycle chart that we've been discussing in the past few episodes. There's a need for a sense of safety in every area and aspect of your life. And if that safety feels threatened, right, in any area or aspect, then that can trigger the alert and alarm systems in the brain, and that can bring this very real feeling of threat. So with scrupulosity, it feels like your spiritual safety is being threatened, or your eternal safety is being threatened, or your eternal well-being is being threatened. And the response is very real. Like you feel it very physically. It's as though you're seeing a rattlesnake on the trail. It feels like a very real threat, right? Once again, the brain can't tell the difference between a perceived threat and a real threat. If it perceives a threat to be real, it's going to treat it as real in an effort to keep you safe. And so with these perceived threats about like your eternal salvation or about your spiritual well-being and welfare, if they are perceived to be real, your brain will treat it as real, and it's going to activate the alert and alarm systems in your brain and body to brace for this potential encounter with this very real threat. And it will feel very real. At times, it can literally feel like you are encountering a rattlesnake. Like it may feel that threatening. And at other times, it can just be very prolonged and very gradual. And it can feel like you're just encountering a rattlesnake consistently, right? Like perpetually. Like this threat can just linger like over and over and over. Okay, so we're just beginning to dive into what scrupulosity is here. This is feeling so exciting. I hope that you're getting a picture of what OCD can actually look like, that you're beginning to get a picture, right? Like we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg here. But there are so many ways that OCD can show up in someone's life, that it can affect someone's life. And when we're talking about it in a religious setting, like it can be so disguised because the obsessions and compulsions are centered around legitimate religious practices and beliefs and doctrines, right? Like from the outside looking in, it can seem to be like just normal, right? But internally, an individual could be experiencing really intense levels of anxiety. And the worst part is they might not even know it. Like it might just be totally masked by this very, what they perceive to be a very real concern for their spiritual well being. Okay, so in my efforts to bring this struggle to the light more, I'm hoping to share what I'm going to call real OCD moments. And I'm just going to share experiences that I've had or that I've recently had where I experienced and recognized OCD. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you learned something new and that you can share it with someone else. Next week's episode is going to pick up right where this one left off. So I hope that you join next week for the continuation of this episode. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.